Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Avatar Top 10 video. This one is going to be my Top 10 The Legend of Korra characters. Next video is going to be my Top 10 Avatar The Last Airbender characters. So I've got the next two ones planned out, this and next week. So yeah, this is going to be my personal list. So just be aware of that if you're commenting like, why isn't this character on your list? It is my personal list. This isn't me trying to kind of give my thoughts on what I consider to be the fandom's top 10 or anything like that. No, this is just my list, so just be aware of that. I will at the end of the video explain why maybe some of the more common characters were left out of the list, but for the most part, if you have any questions about the list, let me know in the comments below and I'll try and comment about it. So we'll begin with my 10th favourite Korra character, and that's going to be Kai, who's probably the most minor character of all of these characters on my list. And I felt that when he was introduced into the series in season 3, it was a really good decision, because in many ways what Korra kind of struggled with maybe throughout its run, that because it was kind of so focused on, okay, season 1's telling this story, season 2's telling this story, it didn't really introduce those minor characters who then became bigger characters until the kind of second half of the entire series. And you got that kind of with the likes of Kai, Opal, the rest of the Beifongs and stuff like that. Really, Jinora was like kind of the only character who from the early seasons made a jump from being more of a minor character to being a kind of main character. So I really appreciated it when Kai was introduced. They straight away presented a story with him, that he was the first of the kind of new airbenders apart from Bumi to join with everyone. You set up this relationship with Jinora, and then the most obvious thing with him is just that he's very familiar character type to us, because he's very much like Aang. He's kind of more like a kind of a more mischievous kind of version of Aang, where Aang was kind of always looking for these fun things to do, whereas Kai was looking for these fun things, but they also caused trouble for people. Like, he was a bit of a thief. So it was interesting to get that more of a kind of bad boy version of Aang, and just his relationship with Jinora, the way it developed, the way he was one of the more powerful of the new airbenders was very good. And especially what they did with the idea of, I suppose really him being like Mako and Bolin, not having a family, and kind of becoming their little brother, realizing that he doesn't have to do everything on his own, that with this new group of people who he's kind of learning airbending from, he has a new family. So I really like that. The relationship was one of the better ones, better done in this show, and just definitely an example of probably one of my favourite minor characters who kind of then became a supporting character in the show. So let's move on to number 9. My number 9 pick is going to be Unalaq, our book 2 villain. I know a lot of people don't give him a lot of credit, but honestly, I think he is one of the better villains in the series. I really like the way he and his reasoning for what he was doing linked so well into the themes of book 2. You know, that book is about family and spirits, and with Unalaq you have a guy who's really spiritual. He basically is the most spiritual person in the show as far as we know at this point. Maybe apart from Iroh, but at this stage he's kind of a spirit. But he is deeply spiritual. He becomes Korra's spiritual kind of teacher, and does actually teach her some important stuff, despite him using her, but he did still help her on her spiritual journey. But also, the whole family side of things is very important. I think a lot of people forget the depth and the really interesting dynamics that are going on here. That Unalaq is jealous of Tonraq, his brother, because his brother was the one whose child was the Avatar. That was his dream. That is why he then, as a member of the Red Lotus, basically told Zahir and crew to try and capture Korra. So from a very early age, he could basically act as her mentor and basically have the current Avatar be someone trained by his group, so the Avatar could be the way he wanted it to be, like he always wanted his own child to be. So you can see that, and because his own children aren't the Avatar, he doesn't treat them very well. One of the themes is family, and here's a guy who doesn't really care about his family. He's more focused on the spirit stuff, becoming a kind of Avatar himself. Eventually is what he becomes, goes off script, and just ends up being this really interesting person in that it's a villain, but it's a villain who's also a member of Korra's family. And this is the first character in the show that she has to kill, basically. In that by the end, yes, she uses the spiritual technique, but it ends up killing Unalaq because she has to kill a member of her own family, but for the right reasons. And it's just the level of respect towards the end, when she says go in peace, because she understands that fundamentally he was kind of on the right track. The world did need to become more spiritual. It was becoming a bit anti-spiritual almost. That's the idea that they're going for with Tonrock there. And the decision that she makes, that we all praise Korra for, opening up the spirit portals, is because of what she learned from Unalaq. The reason she's able to do that, and the reason she progresses so much, starts with the bit of spiritual training Unalaq gives her. She defeats him with the technique that he taught her. It all comes together very nicely, and I think he just works perfectly well as our villain for Book 2, Spirits. Number 8, Mako. Again, a character who I feel should have got so much more. Should have got a lot more attention in Book 2, Book 3, Book 4. I really think they made some errors with him with regards to making too much of his plot about the romance stuff, and then once they got out of that, they blame him for it all, and he really kind of drops down the pecking order in terms of main characters. But I still like him as a character. I think there's so much potential here, and some of the stuff that they did do with him I think was really good, and that he did get some really, really strong moments, like the Book 4 finale, him staying back, making his big sacrifice to blow up the Colossus, and Korra kind of praising him for this and thanking him so much for putting his life on the line like that. In Book 3, he gets some really big moments where he defeats Ming Hua, just barely, but he still defeats her, and then rushes up to help Bolin take out Gazan. They get across how powerful of a bender he is exceptionally well. At the end of Book 1, Amon praises him for how strong he is. He can do lightning generation, he can do lightning redirection. He is established as one of the most powerful firebenders we've kind of seen, and they keep it that way. Unfortunately, it's one of the only things that they were really consistent with his character, because it was so focused on romance. And I almost wish they had gone down the road that they were thinking of going down, of having him start going out with Izumi's daughter, and that being Mako's ultimate kind of endgame ship. I kind of don't like the idea that they went for, where they just didn't have him be with anyone at the end, almost as punishment for the way they wrote the romances. But I don't think most of the romance stuff was his fault. At the end of the day, the whole Book 1 kiss thing is really caused for the most part by Korra taking Pema's advice and that going awry. The whole Asami thing in Book 2, I really didn't like the way that went, but fundamentally it was Asami who initiated that, and then they never establish if they get back together again. But again, I like his character. I like how he's like the really intelligent member of the team. He is probably the most effective at being the leader of the group, especially when he then becomes a detective and stuff like that. You can see what he adds to the group in terms of his intelligence, his skill in battle, and stuff like that. I do wish they had went a little bit more with down the road of making it a big deal that he is a cop, making the fact that he is in a pretty high position by the end of the series a big deal. Maybe even go as far to, like, Lynn maybe say to him that, in a couple of years I'll be retiring, I'm recommending you for Chief of Police. Do something like that just to give a really big and grand thing to Mako at the end to show how much he's progressed. I do think that as we get more content from Korra, maybe through comics, that may be a big reveal that Mako does become Chief of Police at some stage. I think that would work perfectly for him. Number 7 on my list is going to be Mako's brother, Bolin. Now, the reason I rate him higher than Mako is because, while I say personally in terms of like personality and stuff like that, I like Mako better, I feel I have to place Bolin higher because I like Bolin as a character, and I really like what they did with him in terms of his character development and how he became more and more involved in the story as it went on. You can almost look at Mako and Bolin's kind of involvements in the story as kind of reverse paths. Mako started off really kind of heavily involved in the series. Bolin was probably the least involved in book one. Yet by the end of the series, the only real big thing Mako did in book four was, yeah, he helped Wu a bit, but it was that big sacrifice moment, whereas Bolin got this whole arc with like Varric, Zhu Li, Opal, and he was like the most important of the brothers. But why I place him on this list is because he did have really good development. Even book one, where he wasn't that involved, he had that development where he went from being the guy who was afraid of Amon on stage, couldn't even fight back where all the criminals around him were still willing to fight back against Amon, to at the end being on top of Naga, charging in to save Asami. Just that little bravery arc that he went on, becoming a little bit of a hero. Then in book two, he becomes the hero on screen and off screen when he saves the president. And he does it on his own, without the help of his brother, who always helps him out. Without Korra being around. He did it, it was all him. So that was a really important arc for him, and you had some extra focus on him because of the Esker relationship, which was pretty fun. Then in book three, you get more of a serious relationship, that they're really going to go somewhere with it, with him and Opal. You have this hint that he has something special about him. He has the potential to be a metal bender. But they don't go down the road of giving him metal bending, they go even further than that. He can lava bend. That's really interesting, just that they went as far as to make him one of these super special benders that has one of these amazing techniques. And while, yes, I did really appreciate that they didn't make him beat Gazan on his own as a novice lava bender, that he did need the help of Mako here, but that just having that technique puts him on a whole other level if he can actually get experience with the technique. Then book four, you kind of set him up as making a little bit of a mistake. You know, he's joined up with Kuvira because he likes being a humanitarian and stuff like that, but he's ignoring the fact that there are these bad stuff going on in the background. Then you almost have the idea that he's taking it that like his friends are turning on him when he's found his path, and he has to realize eventually that he did make the wrong decision. He has been blind a little bit to what's been going on, and then has to make it up to everyone, especially Opal primarily. And the way he's very involved with the Beifongs from here on out, his relationship with Opal, I thought was very well done. So in many ways, I consider him to be, after Korra, the most developed member of Team Avatar, so that's why he places very highly on my list. Number 6, though, is Tenzin, Korra's mentor throughout the series. And I really like what they did with him as being our primary older character in the show. Effectively, kind of, I suppose, will have that kind of Iroh type role in Korra. But what I really appreciate with him is that they didn't just make him the wise person. That he didn't have the answers to everything. He wasn't just helping out all the other characters. He himself had to learn from Korra almost just as much, if not more, than she learned from him. He was always there as a kind of supporting character for Korra because obviously he's older, more experienced, he can help her through a lot of things. But in terms of his issues, Korra really helped him through his. And by the end, I really liked that mentor relationship, in that, yeah, he's always going to be there as this almost parental figure who helped her as a mentor in some ways. He's her airbending master. But he wasn't her spiritual guide. That was Jinora. He wasn't the one to start her spiritual journey. That was Unalaq. He wasn't the one to teach her everything, but he did help her at various points. Like him getting the advice from Aang to, don't try and be me, be you, you are Tenzin. That was really important. In book 3, you had the whole idea of him almost going overboard with the fact that there are airbenders around and making all these mistakes just because he was so excited that this was finally the case, and not realizing that you have been, he himself, Tenzin, has been part of this culture his whole life. He doesn't see these weird culture things as being weird, whereas to everyone else, that's what it is. It's weird to have to wear these clothes, eat this way, and do all this stuff. And so he gets some advice from Pema there, he gets some advice from Korra, his brother Bumi, and eventually grows to accept stuff like that. As much as he cares about Jinora and thinks she's still very young, she is gradually growing into a master airbender, and he has to accept that. So you had that, and then, you know, he wasn't, I suppose, massively involved or didn't have much of an arc in book 4, but he was always there as this kind of mentor figure for Korra. But I just like by the end, he's constantly had these moments where he's kind of doubting Korra, but she constantly proves him wrong, and it just is this really nice arc between the two of them that goes on. And I think more than anything, I appreciate that they didn't just make him the Iroh character. Like, in the grand scheme of things, Iroh in the original series never really learned anything from any of our characters, really. He was always the one giving advice to them. So I like that they kind of had the younger characters teach the older characters something here. And as well as that, he got some really cool fights. Tenzin versus Ahir was a great fight. And just overall was, you know, as the son of Aang, they really nailed his character, I think. But let's move into the top 5 with number 5. That is Amon. I think he just is the best villain that we had in The Legend of Korra. What he has over so many of the others is just, he had the backstory. He had the charisma, the ability to speak to people and get them on his side. He had the amazing powers that got him victories in battle. He had the mystery surrounding him. And even by the end, you understood what he was about, but you understood why he needed to be taken down. But you still felt sorry for him when he was killed. And I think that is just a mark of a really good villain. And, you know, I'll just say it now, there are no more villains on my list. I rate Unalaq and Amon, the first 2 villains, higher than the second 2 villains, because I felt that the first half of the season didn't really suffer as much from the lack of number of episodes compared to like Avatar The Last Airbender, whereas I felt the villains in the second 2 seasons were really struggling to get enough screen time, get enough focus on them with everything going on. And that's why I kind of rate them so highly. And you're probably seeing that as we go through this, that a lot of the characters I'm rating highly here are characters that just had super solid development, that they weren't really just left with nothing. So Amon, again, just the design with the mask, the bloodbending skills, where he learned it from, and I think most of all the backstory. I think if they didn't have that backstory, I wouldn't rate him so highly. Just knowing that he was Noatok, the son of Yakone, the brother of Tarlok, and just the pressure that was put on him as the more skilled of the 2 brothers, and how Bending ended up ruining that family, and how that turned him against Bending, and created the kind of hypocrisy that he had, that he was a Bender trying to take out other Benders, and forming this equality movement against Benders. It was just really fascinating, but you understood why he was the way he was. And again, you know, they could have done more of that backstory, and definitely I feel like I want to see it at some point, when he met Hiroshi, when he put the mask on, where he learned his takeaway bending technique from. But what they did was more than, say, Kuvira. Like, I think Kuvira would have been so much more successful as a villain if they shown us her backstory. Show us young Kuvira as an orphan. So show her reaction to whatever happened to her parents leaving her. Show her reaction to Sue taking her in, and just the various moments throughout her childhood when maybe she suggested something to Sue and Sue disagreed with it or something like that, and gradually the kind of more villainous side of her personality forming. With Amon we got that, with Kuvira we didn't. With the Red Lotus we didn't really get much of that at all. The only thing with Unalaq I really feel we were missing was the moment he met Vatu for the first time, and where kind of everything come together. I think that's the one bit missing from his story that's kind of wrapping everything together. But just, I really like this guy because he was such a good public speaker. Like those moments where he was able to just control a crowd that way. The creepy moments of just like him appearing out of nowhere and just instantly kind of defeating Korra, or showing up and just taking Tarlok out after we are beginning to think that Tarlok's maybe going to be the main villain of the series, and suddenly, oh, he's just been out-villained by someone else. That was really cool, and it all leads up to just Korra unlocking airbending, kind of surprising him as the only way that he was defeated in the end. So I really thought he was the best villain. Number 4, Jinora. Again, a character who in book 1, kind of like Bolin, was not really much of a focus. Like, she was just one of the air kids in book 4, and it was cool to get to meet the three of them, but they were just a set. It was just the three of them, and they all had specific personality points. Like, Milo was weird, Iki was hyperactive and a really fast talker, Jinora was the book smart one, who read books a lot, and that's really all we got. But in book 2, they just flicked this switch, and suddenly she was super interesting, giving her this amazing spiritual connection, referencing this kind of stuff like her seeing the statue of Wan and kind of beginning to set up that connection between her and the Avatar, that she is the one to be the Avatar's guide. She is going to be one of Korra's teachers along the way in terms of helping her become spiritual. Her progressing so much, just becoming more of a character, getting a bigger role in the series was important for her. Being really important at the very end of book 2 with helping Korra to defeat Unavatu at the end, with basically having these light spirits around her, being so spiritual that she's like the only beacon of light in the spirit world, and being the thing to kind of put that spark of light in Unavatu to get Raava back. Just some really strong stuff going on here. And then book 3, again, she again remains just as important a character. Her relationship with Kai starts here. And most importantly, I think she's beginning to realize that she should have her tattoos by now or something like that. She's very close, and Kai kind of helping her to realize that you need to kind of stand up for yourself here. You need to make it clear that you are good enough to get your tattoos, and she gets them at the end. And arguably, Jinora goes through the most character development in book 3 of any characters, and I really like that. The only downside for her was that she just wasn't in book 4 all that much. She had that cool moment with Opal when she saved Korra from the first fight with Kuvira, but they didn't really expand on the Kai-Jinora relationship all that much. They didn't give them that really strong relationship moment that I think they should have. This was the book where she was the Master Airbender. She was our next Master Airbender, and we didn't really get to see her fight all that much. Just a little bit disappointed with her portrayal in the final book, but on the strength of book 2 and 3 alone, just making this huge jump from kind of really minor character to high supporting, almost main character was really well done for her. Number 3, maybe some people disagree with this, but Raava, our spirit character on the list. You guys know how much I love the beginnings episodes, and I think Raava was probably the most important thing we learned from these episodes. Just knowing that the Avatar spirit and why the Avatar spirit remains part of the Avatar after all these like hundreds, thousands of years or whatever. That she started off not really caring about humans. She didn't care about them at all. She was just so focused on her fight with Vatu that she didn't care what their fight destroyed or anything like that in the middle of their fights. It was just all about spirits and stuff like that. And so when she met Juan and learned from him, and she had character development, that was really important. That it wasn't that she, as the all-knowing spirit of light and peace and balance in the world, thought Juan stuff. She learned from him to kind of maintain hope, to like not give up. And so when in the end Juan's death, she returns that advice to him, that he thinks he's failed in his final moments, and she's just like, no, you've taught me this, we'll never give up, and I'll be with you for all of your lifetime. So just she makes that decision in that moment herself to always be part of the Avatar's lifetime, to always be a part of the reincarnation of Juan. I think that's just really strong the way they did that. And then stuff like, you compare the way the Avatar came into being first with the second time it happened, and how it's just so forced, it's so heat of the moment when it happens the first time. Juan desperately just touches the portal, and it almost happens by accident, like he doesn't know that that's going to happen. And then the second time when Korra does it with Raava, it's just this beautiful moment where it's just, this is where both of them are meant to be. They're meant to be one. It just really comes together well. And again, she doesn't have a lot of screen time, but it was powerful, the kind of focus on her that we did get. Second place links into this very heavily. It's Avatar 1, our first Avatar. Huge role to fill. When we knew that we were getting the first Avatar story in book 2, they had to get it right, basically. This is something so many fans, including myself, probably most of all, was looking for, and they needed to get it right. Who was the first Avatar, and what was so special about him that he went from being a normal person to being the first in this long line of amazing people who would attempt to bring peace to the world? And so when we find out that he starts off as this kind of subtle revolutionary in this kind of time period when everything's ruled by these ruling families, like the Chews, and everyone lives on the back of line turtles. They kind of struggle to live. The spirits have them all kind of held into like these line turtle cities, and he's trying to make a better place for everyone. But to do that, he kind of has to steal from the rich people and help other people out. You see kind of how selfless he is in these moments where, yes, he's stealing and it's a bad thing, and maybe he's going too hard down the revolutionary road and maybe causing riots and stuff like that, maybe inciting violence and stuff like that. Fundamentally, his want for like equality, balance in this town works out really well, and you see how much he cares for nature in that he kind of feeds some of the animals before he gets food for himself. He cares for his friends, and so when he's kind of put out into the spirits, into the spirit wilds, the fact that he makes friends with the spirits is really important, because at the end of the day, in ATLA, in Korra with other characters, we don't see many humans make friends with spirits, really. There's Jinora a little bit, with some of the light spirits. There's Boomy with Boomju, there's Aang with Heibai. But just the fact that Wan was like the first person to really go out there and just change the way both sides kind of saw each other. That the spirits were against humans, the humans were against spirits, and he was the first one to really try and open up this kind of conversation between the two. It's still not resolved. Like, it's something that Korra, I assume, is going to attempt to resolve next. If we ever get any future Korra content, that's probably what she's going to attempt to do next. Finish kind of what Wan started and fully heal that rift between humans and spirits. But again, coming back to what I said about Raava, the fact that he is the one to teach her, that she learns kind of more from him than he learns from her, that again, like, we only know this guy for basically like 2 episodes, not even 2 full episodes, because there's a few scenes with Korra here and there, and the fact that we care so much about him, that we fear for him when he goes into the battle. It's so emotional when he learns all of the elements. And then, obviously, when we see him die, it was a real shock to me to see that he hadn't brought peace to the world. I couldn't believe it when they made the decision to not have our first Avatar be someone who really made a huge change in the world. He made important changes in like his decisions to keep the portals closed at that point in time. And I don't really criticize him too much for that, because at that point in time, it was very much needed for like separation between the two before they attempted to integrate them back in together. But just really tragic that, again, we only knew this character for like 44 minutes, really, less than that. And his death has a huge impact. It's one of the saddest in the entire series, seeing humanity at war. It's not a war between humans and spirits. It's the second humans are allowed to explore their whole world, they immediately go to war. It's really dark, sad, and then just seeing him so down on things when he has been so optimistic up to now. He's always been the hopeful one, and then again it's Raava who's the one to kind of, in his very final moments, give him a little bit of peace just before he dies, that there's hope that the Avatar will continue, Raava will continue to be reborn every time Wan is reborn, basically. So really good stuff between these two characters. That's why I rate them so highly. But my number 1 pick has to be Korra, our main character. Just quite simply, she goes through the most character development. She's the most interesting character in the show, and that's why I place her so highly. I think really in this show, apart from like going heavy into this is my really super personal favorite character. Like for me, it's like Carrot Guy or something like that. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, I like Chit Sang a lot and stuff like that. One of my favorite chips is like the Duke and Toph. But I'm never going to place them at like the top of my list because they are kind of a little bit of a kind of oddball choices. So Korra for me just is the solid choice, and I do really like her as a character. Just that it is all about the character development for me here. She goes through so much in all of the seasons. I think season 2 and 4 are her best kind of development paths, for sure. But even book 1 and 3, she does have decent development. Maybe not 3 so much, but 1 she does as well. And just, it was interesting to get to meet an Avatar who was so different to Aang. She was opposite in almost every single way. She knew all of the elements Aang didn't know, but had to learn the one he did know. She was completely opposite to his personality, where he would kind of avoid conflict. She'd almost seek it out. He was the reluctant Avatar. She was the one who always wanted to be the Avatar. And her journey about like being so optimistic and then just constantly being kind of beaten down, having these failures and then successes and then failures and then being like forced out of being the Avatar through injury. It again is like the opposite of Aang's journey, where he struggled very early on with just trying to be the Avatar. He was kind of almost holding back early on, and then gradually was forced into the role, and then gradually was the big Avatar at the end. Korra almost has her big Avatar moments very early on in the series, and then is kind of beaten up about it, and kind of her faith, her drive to be the Avatar is almost kind of taken away from her in like season 3 and 4, and she has to get it back. It was a really good character arc, you know. There's so much that happens in the series. It's hard to sum up her overall character arc over the 4 seasons, but just seeing her at the end compared to her at the start, it's so interesting just to see her not really knowing what to do as the Avatar, but just encountering all of this stuff, and then to her at the end, knowing in her mind that she has a lot to do, and being happy to do it all, knowing what she wants to do next as the Avatar. That was an important thing, and then just learning to, I suppose, better understand her enemies. It wasn't just a case of, oh, that's the enemy, I'm going to like smash him or anything like that. She understood Kuvira in the end. She understood all the other enemies she fought over the entire series, and that was really important. So there's my list for the most part. Let me know what your thoughts are on this in the comments below. In terms of characters I don't have on the list, I suppose the most notable ones are probably Asami and Lin. And my explanation on Asami is just that I like Asami as a character, but she just didn't have enough character development. She wasn't enough focus of the show to really make me put her on my top 10 list. I'm sure a lot of people will place her pretty highly on their lists now just because of the whole Korra Asami thing. But again, you know, I feel maybe I would place that higher if we had more focus on the relationship in the series. With Lin, again, she's probably my number 11 pick. Really close to making this list. Maybe her and Kai are interchangeable on my list, but again, just it's a little bit of a case of just her personality type. Maybe just at a base level isn't to me the most like appealing character, but I did like her just development over the whole series, that she had to learn to accept kind of Korra as an ally and stuff like that. She was very angry about Korra, then her issues with her family, her sister, then her mother, and she really became a hero. She had some really strong moments, like her book 1 sacrifice to save Tenzin and co. There was some really good stuff. But again, we're going to end the video here. Next week's top 10 video is going to be top 10 Avatar characters, so check that out next week. Other than that, thanks for watching, and bye.